Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Station is ready for the event.
Stanford Magazine, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Station, this is Tracy White with Stanford Magazine. How do you hear me?
Hello, I've got you loud and clear. How about me?
Great. It's so nice to meet you. You look great. Since other people are listening to this, I'm going to just introduce you a little bit. This is Jessica Watkins, an American astronaut, geologist, former international rugby player, Stanford alum, class of 2010. Now as a member of the Artemis team, you have the possibility of becoming the first woman on the moon and possibly the first person of color on the moon. PhD in geology from UCLA, Caltech. Is this your first space flight? Can you hear me?
Indeed, yes. It is my first space flight. Yes.
Yeah. And you've been up how long now?
So we have been up here almost 5 months now. And we'll be up here about 5.5 to 6. Yep.
Yeah. So when you expected home?
So right now we're looking at around mid-October. It's going to depend a little bit on weather. We are going to launch the next crew. So they are Crew 5. We are Crew 4, launching on a SpaceX Crew Dragon. And they will come up here and we'll have a few days, several days of handover where we can kind of let them know where things are and how we're kind of running things, so that they're prepared to be the team on board. And then we'll head back down after a few days with them in around mid-October.
Okay. Well, I have heard that it was your dream to become an astronaut. So can you tell me a little bit about how that came about and what this experience has been like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, as you mentioned, first kind of voiced a desire to be an astronaut when I was pretty young, around the age of 9. And I think the main kind of driver for that when I was around that age was I was attending an after-school program at the Judy Resnick Elementary School. And I came home and was asking my parents about who she was and what her story was about. And I think that was the first time I learned that you could go to space as a career, and I was definitely hooked.
Yeah, well, so I did hear that Judy Resnick was kind of a role model for you. And do you feel that you can be a role model for young kids yourself?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope to be able to return the favor for all of the mentors and role models that I had growing up. That certainly kind of allowed me to see myself in roles that I aspired to be in and contributing in ways I aspired to contribute. So to the extent that I'm able to do that, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Okay. How are you feeling physically? How has being in space affected you physically?
Yeah, so I feel great. We have an amazing team of folks on the ground who are checking in on us, both doctors as well as physical trainers who are making sure that we are in good shape up here. Certainly, spaceflight and long-duration spaceflight in particular is tough on the body. We know this from research that we can experience without doing anything about it. We can experience pretty significant bone density loss and muscle degradation, as well as other changes to our bodies in terms of vision and blood flow, things like that. So we have a set of kind of what we call countermeasures in place, and largely what that focuses on is exercise, both resistive exercise as well as cardiovascular exercise, to help combat some of those effects of spaceflight. So with that, we work out out every day. We have a resistance machine where we can load up a bar and do squats and deadlifts and everything that you could do on a bar. And then as well, we have a bike and a treadmill that we can use for cardio. And so we're spending a couple of hours every day making sure that we are strong and healthy and ready for return.
And your schedule, I think I heard that you get a schedule sent to you each day. I assume it's a very strict schedule. Can you tell me about that? And if you fit in rest and relaxation, and then maybe you can start talking about your the science work you're doing on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. Every day we get a schedule uploaded to us. We see it the night before, and sometimes there are last-minute changes. But every day we are following a schedule that helps keep everybody just kind of on the same page. This is the International Space Station, and it is certainly an international effort up here. And so to have a kind of single source document that we're all working off of helps keep everybody in sync. And so we wake up in the morning and we start every day with a conference, essentially a meeting where we all of our different centers in Moscow, Scuba, Munich, Huntsville, and of course Houston and at Johnson Space Center all come together to make sure that we're starting off on the right foot. We all have an understanding of what the day's game plan is, and then we go off and accomplish it. And so on any given day, we could be doing a number of things, which is a really awesome part of being up here, that we have just so many different things that we can get involved with. So we spend about 30% of our time doing maintenance on the station. So just like your house or any other building, we definitely have to maintain it and make sure that we are doing our best to extend the legacy of the ISS. And then the other percentage of our time, as you mentioned, is focused largely on science. We are involved in lots of different kinds of scientific investigations, scientific research. We look at biology, for example. We're participated in a study looking at cell biology, looking at the impact of long-duration space flight on immune cells. And how they can age over time in this spaceflight environment and what we can do about that. We also are involved in a study on plant growth. So we are looking at ways that we can grow plants in microgravity, in particular looking at ways to do that without soil. Soil adds mass and volume. And also there are containment constraints as well. So looking at ways that we can, in the future, learn to grow plants, grow crops that astronauts might need on some of the even longer duration and further expeditions as we look towards the moon and Mars. So we have lots of interesting science, and then we also are doing technology demonstrations, again with an eye for what is to come, looking at, for example, a study called AstroRad, where we're looking at a vest that we can wear during a solar particle event that would protect us from radiation, and looking into how that vest would function and the wearability of that. And then that same vest will actually be riding on Artemis 1, on the mannequin that will be riding on Artemis 1. So we'll get both sets of data on that vest that will help us understand how to move forward. So much of what we do here on station is contributing to those next steps moving forward, using the ISS as a test bed for future exploration.
That segues nicely into you being a member of the Artemis program. And do you mind describing a little bit to people what that is and what it means to you, and what the ultimate goal of the Artemis program is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Artemis team was a team of folks from the NASA astronaut corps that were kind of identified to help lay the foundation, set up the pathways towards going back to the moon and going back to the moon to stay for a long duration as part of the NASA Artemis program. So this program will have several missions. The first will be launching here very shortly as soon as we figure out the quirks that we encountered in this last weekend.
Right.
And that will go around the moon. And then that one is uncrewed. Artemis 2 will be crewed and will go around the moon and be a test mission. And then Artemis 3 will be a crewed mission that will go down to the surface of the moon. And so to be a part of the NASA team, the astronaut corps in particular, at this time, it's just a super exciting time in human spaceflight, and just honored to be able to be a part of these amazing efforts.
Well, it also sounds like your education has. Maybe you can tell me. Did you choose your education to prepare you to be an astronaut? Possibly be able to study rocks on the moon? You have a nickname, Rock Nerd. Is that what the other astronauts call you? I think. And I have to comment on your Stanford sweatshirt. That is really great to see. So yeah, tell me about your education and what your goals have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure thing. So yes, I certainly had the idea of being an astronaut, the dream of being an astronaut somewhere in the back of my head, and certainly wanted to kind of keep that door open at least, but honestly never really thought that it was something that would be attainable for me, and not something that I kind of strategically pursued necessarily. It was more of finding something that I really was passionate about and something that I really enjoyed, and that would also enable that opportunity if the opportunity came. And so for me, actually starting out as an undergrad at Stanford, I started out as a mechanical engineering major. Largely, actually, because I thought that was what was required in order to be an astronaut. Hadn't done a ton of research into it, but that was the idea I had in my head. And after about around my sophomore year, really just discovered that mechanical engineering was just not my passion. It was just not something that got me out of bed every morning, and just was not something I was really into. And so I was able to kind of flip through the course bulletin at Stanford and found these courses that sounded so interesting to me. Classes with titles like What Makes a Habitable Planet and Planetary Materials. And I said, what is this? Whatever this is, I'm in. And I looked up, and it was in the Geological and Environmental Sciences department. And so I signed up for my first geology class, and the rest is history. I definitely fell in love, with particularly the idea of planetary geology. The idea of being able to study rocks on the surface of another planet just absolutely enamored me, and still does to this day.
Yeah, well, so exciting that you're so close to doing that. What would it mean to you to be the first woman on the moon?
Yeah, I think for me, just the idea that being a part of this endeavor at this time in history means that I have the privilege and the honor of being able to be a part of this effort that will require the entire agency, and then the support of the entire nation as well. And so the notion that we are going back to the moon, to the surface, that we are going to put a woman on the surface, and to know that is will be one of my colleagues, one of my friends, somebody I know personally. It's just even difficult to wrap my head around. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, quick comment. I did read that, you were on the Stanford rugby team, which won a national championship. and you've scored the winning goal. And tell me about what you learned about being on a team that's helpful in your current job.
Yeah, absolutely. You asked about how my education has prepared me for this job, but the other really big part of what I learned at Stanford was on the Stanford women's rugby team, and that really that experience on the team really built up a lot of the skill set that I think is really important in this job, and especially up here on a mission like this. The thing about rugby in particular, I think, is a rugby team requires people of all sizes, shapes, skill sets, strengths in order to be successful. And the NASA team, the human spaceflight team, the international cooperation that is required to do what we do up here every day is exactly like that. We require all kinds of skill sets, expertise, backgrounds in order to come together, pool our resources, and do something that we couldn't definitely not do on our own. And so learning that lesson on the rugby pitch is absolutely applicable to being able to be a good teammate up here on the ISS.
Yeah. Well, let's go to one more. We're running out of time, so let's go to some of the bigger questions. I'm really curious about what your living situations are like how you stay in bed at night to sleep. Maybe you can at least tell me that.
Yeah, absolutely. So sleep is not an issue at all up here, at least for me. We have crew quarters, essentially kind of the size of a phone booth, where we have our personal computers and personal effects, as well as a sleeping bag. And so we just get into our sleeping bag, zip ourselves up, and for me personally, so some people like to have a restraint across them. So when they're on the wall, they kind of are restrained to the wall and give them the sensation that they're laying down and that gravity is pulling on them. However, for me, I actually find it very comfortable to just float. So my sleeping bag is attached to the wall, but the bottom of it is not, and so my feet just float up, and it is super comfortable, super easy to relax.
Well, on that note, I've heard that you do an amazing backflip in space. Could you maybe show us?
I set a high expectation, but absolutely.
Okay. Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah. I think we have 2 minutes left. Would you like to comment on why human spaceflight is important to people who may not quite understand why we spend so much money on these efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are multiple kind of more practical reasons that human spaceflight is important and provides enables life to be better on the ground. There are the scientific advances that we can create by doing research in the microgravity environment. There are the technological advances that we make through the process of developing technology to function in microgravity and to enable productivity on the ISS. There are economic benefits in terms of stimulating economies and industries. But I think for me, the most important and the most convincing reason that spaceflight is important, human spaceflight is important, is is a bit more intangible, perhaps. But the idea that spaceflight unites all of us. It is the idea of exploring the unknown, looking over the hill, wondering what is around the corner, is something that is innate in all of us, and something that truly unites us. And so to be able to see the International Space Station in particular as an example of what we can do when we pool our resources, we can leverage our differences instead of letting them divide us, what we are able to accomplish as a team and as one whole body. I think that is something that is really important to provide an example of, and something that we can strive for in all of different realms.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. It's so great talking with you. This was wonderful. Safe flight home.
So great talking with you as well. Thank you so much. Go Card.
Station, this is Houston ACR that concludes the event.
Thank you to all participants from Stanford Magazine. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.